Welcome to the Discovery Doc podcast, where we advocate for optimal wellness and reducing everyday toxic loads, no matter where life takes you. I'm Dr. Cece, doctor in nursing practice, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and a crunchy mama.
I'm Anna Kate, a medical mystery overachiever and your discovery liaison. Join us on this exciting journey as we explore the world of holistic health, cutting-edge research, and practical solutions for a healthier life. Together, we'll navigate through the complexities of wellness, sharing valuable insights and expert advice.
Tune in to the Discovery Doc podcast. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and discover a whole new way of looking at your health.
Welcome back to the Discovery Doc podcast. I'm here with your host,
Dr. Cece, functional medicine nurse practitioner, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and crunchy mama, and our co-host over here.
I'm Anna Kate, your medical mystery overachiever and discovery liaison. And we have another wonderful guest. Y'all, I am so excited to talk to her
about this conversation.
Okay, you please introduce her and then let's get to talking to her.
Okay, we have Miss Ann Margolis, who is a nurse midwife and a holistic nurse midwife of over almost 30 years, which is amazing. She is an author, she's an educator, and the owner of Home Sweet Home Birth, which is not just for home births, but hospital births as well. She is just an expert. Yes, an expert in all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And we are so excited to have you on here. I just want to give you the floor for a little bit. Who are you? How did you get to where you are today? Can you let our community know just how Home Sweet Home Birth was created?
How did you birth Home Sweet Home Birth?
All right. So it's a long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. But, you can interrupt me or tell me to, go. All right. All right. So it started as I was a nurse. After I was a nurse, I was an obstetric nurse. That's where when I went to nursing school, and I did obstetrics, I was like, I have to do this. I have to be involved in mommies having babies. And so I was working as an obstetric nurse for 4 years. And during that time, there's several things that happened that were critical to my becoming a midwife. One of them was working as a nurse in a typical hospital is where I developed fear of birth. It's where I saw a lot of things that in my head or in my body didn't feel like it should be happening. So I started to not trust birth. I started to fear birth. Birth was an emergency. It was a potential lawsuit meant to happen. It was a potential emergency, a crisis about to happen. And we had to do all these kind of things because it, medically and surgically to save the situation. So that was how I saw way too many interventions. Like people would just walk in to have a baby. They didn't have any problems, but they were already put on the monitor, told they can't eat and drink, given IV, had to be put in the bed. And, it was like the cascade of interventions I would just witness and constantly. And I didn't always see good outcomes. And I saw way too many cesarean births than I ever expected in my University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing training. Then it was also, my hands were tied as a nurse. We were just kind of doing the orders. We were fulfilling the orders of the doctor. Then my first two babies, especially my first baby and also my second, but were very traumatic. Birth trauma, I know, is what they call it now. But I was given royal treatment. Like I'm the nurse. I'm the nurse on the unit having a baby. That's so exciting. There was a big heart on my bed, and but I was really scared. I did take Lamaze, but I remember the doctor who was he was the chief he was the best the doctor. I thought he's the best surgeon, but the best there. I didn't know there were midwives these days, and I remember the doctor kept coming in and sticking his hand inside of me, going outside and telling my colleague, the nurse, she's still 4. She's still 4. And I just remember that happened a lot. And then at some point he said, just give her PIT. In walks my colleague. Now, I'm a nurse, so I know what PIT is. But how many moms don't know what PIT is? So I'm a nurse, and I'm
figured that out.
Well, Pitocin, that is the drug that causes the uterus to contract harder, stronger, faster, right? So I said to my colleague, "I don't want pit. I know what that's gonna do." And she's like, "Oh, but she was." Now you have to understand also, I was a dancer. I'm very fit, I'm very athletic, and I was my biggest fear, my biggest tiger, it was having my body cut open, major abdominal surgery. And because I had seen too many things that bad outcomes enough to have, like, I was like, that
Mhm.
was my biggest fear, to have a cesarean. I started young. I was 24. So she said to me, in her full heart, "Honey, you don't want a cesarean, do you?" Well, no, I don't want a cesarean, so, like, but she meant well, but that was like,
Yeah.
I was feared into it, which is, so many moms have that experience. And so, yeah, as soon as they put the Pitocin in, and then my Lamaze went out the window, and I couldn't cope with the more intense, painful contractions. And then I heard the doctor say, give her an epidural. And at some point that they did that, and then my
Nice.
baby's heart rate crashed. So based on the monitor strip, I saw they had 10 minutes. They had minutes to get the baby out. And then everyone's looking, their worst fear is happening. Everyone's looking very scared. And it becomes this crisis situation. And she's whisked off. I'm whisked off I
Yeah.
left my body. So I'm watching myself be whisked off to the operating room. And then I'm in this operating room in a hospital where I'm supposed to feel safe. And I'm waiting for the assistant surgeon who never showed up. And I watch the clock. It's going 10 minutes, 20, 30, 45 minutes, an hour. I'm in the state of thinking my baby's going to die or be brain damaged. My baby's brain damaged. Now my baby's going to die. My baby's dead.
Yes.
I was gone. And somehow the medications took over my body, because don't know what happened, but I started to push. And then I called for help. There was no
Mm.
one in with me during this time. I called for help. The doctor comes running in, and I hear him shouting, and I just remember him saying, grab the vacuum. And he cut this big episiotomy and vacuumed her
Mm.
out. And I didn't want to see her. They said, and she's crying, and they said, your baby's fine. Do you
Oh,
want to see your baby? And I just I just wasn't there. I wasn't able to take that in. Once I processed that and realized that was birth trauma, I mean, that was a full PTSD, disassociated, and then I had all the symptoms of PTSD after the birth. But number one, if the baby was in distress, my baby would have
right.
died in that hospital. But they misdiagnosed the distress, so she wasn't in distress. She was fine, so I would have had an
Right.
unnecessary cesarean. Just saying, in a
Mm.
hospital. So that, was like my eyes went
Mm.
open then. That's what made my eyes go open. And I remember saying to a friend, uh, this situation, and why there's so many things that I'm seeing. Like, I just experienced this, but I was a nurse for so many mamas who had experienced this. I can't work in this environment anymore. How can I help the situation? Like, what can I do? She goes, why don't you be a midwife? And I literally said, what's that? So, like we said, we had no internet. This was so 1989 must have been around so I went to the library and I researched midwifery. And I was like, wow, this is what I got to do. And I applied to midwifery school. I was pregnant with going into midwifery school. And I was like, I'm home. And it's a whole different paradigm, because I went from, and when I had my baby with a midwife during midwifery school. And I said, I believe in all this intellectually. I get that the studies show that for healthy women, healthy birth, healthy pregnancy, it the outcomes are much greater, safer with midwife-led care. Obstetricians are for high risk, and they're surgeons, and we need them, thankfully. But in the countries that have the best outcomes, are the countries in the world the Western countries where the midwives, it's midwife-led care. So you have a hospital, you can go to a home birth, you can have a birth center, but midwife-led care in even the hospitals. And the obstetricians are there for high risk. And when that's happening, you have the experts who are experts doing what they're experts, what they have expertise, meaning midwives have expertise in normal and healthy, which is the vast majority. And then the obstetricians or surgeons, they have expertise in serious complications and treating them medically or surgically. And they work together as a team. And that's where we have the top. Like the United States ranks the bottom. We are ranking the poorest in terms of mother-baby outcome, in terms of like morbidity, which means, any sort of serious complication, like, related to the birth, or mortality. Our maternal mortality rates are rising related to childbirth. And so this is the United States, where we spend the most money than any other nation in the world. Right. So I believed that women's body, like I go into midwifery school, I'm learning about normal birth, like our hearts know how to beat and our lungs know how to breathe. If we don't have asthma, or we're not, we don't have a lung disease, we don't have a heart disease, we just have to let it do it, and it's working. Same with birth. Our bodies know how to grow and birth a baby naturally. Like if we just the best intervention is not to disturb it. Like this is a whole different paradigm than what I was learning as a nurse. So as a, or working in the nurse medical community of, we need technology. We trust the staff and the technology. Women are a potential pressure cooker disaster waiting to happen. And we have to protect ourselves from lawsuits. And so the modern medicine is better for this. Well, then I learned to do it right. So I said to my midwife, I believe this, like I get it intellectually. I just have to viscerally feel it so that I can really authentically be a midwife and promote this. She said, "You'll be fine, but you'll be whatever. You're going to have a whole different experience. You'll see for yourself." And it was the most healing birth. And then my other babies were born like this. Just the most healing experience that my body just did it, despite the trauma. And with the support of a wise, trained midwife who knew what normal is and what's not, and if it's not normal, she let me do my thing, and was there, just as this supportive. I knew she knew how to deal with emergencies. She's seen, she was, very seasoned. But anyway, so it was that visceral experience that really created the passion, I would think, behind, that's driving this force of we gotta how do we change the world? Like I can peace on, like I can certainly, my friend and I started my private practice. I worked in a hospital when I first graduated, which was built on the British model, which was midwife doctor team care, and we had 6 midwives, where we took care of everybody, even if they had insulin-dependent diabetes. Even, we did breech twins, breech vaginal, we did vaginal breech, VBAC, vaginal twin, and just call the doctor if there's a problem. If we need surgery, of course, we would call the doctor, or if we needed them to manage the insulin. But most people were normal and healthy, and they benefited. Our outcomes were amazing. And this was in hospitals. We enabled people to have sort of like a home birth like experience in the hospital. I told everyone, move in, bring your own food, bring your own clothes, bring your own everything. And we're just going to support. And it was a lot of the nurses in that hospital were midwives from other countries that couldn't work as midwives. But so we really had a great setup. The problem is when I tried to work in so that was a 2-hour commute for me. So when I had 4 kids, it became kind of hard to have a 2-hour commute each way. Yeah. So I started, looking into more local hospitals, and I was mortified. I wasn't able to practice authentic midwifery, meaning I had, my hands were tied as a midwife by obstetrical policies. Like policies written by ACOG that's not applying to the healthy population. So a friend of mine and I said, why don't we just start a home birth practice? Because I was very fortunate. I had birth center, I had out of hospital training in my training, And I also, in my midwifery training, we had to go down to Tennessee. I don't know if you know about, no, Hyden, Kentucky, the
Yeah.
Frontier School of
Yeah.
Midwifery and Family Nursing,
The
which is
original.
the original horses on
Mhm.
midwives on horseback that went to that they had the worst statistics. This is a very poor community. I'm just saying for the listeners, a very poor, rural, woodsy community with no electricity and plumbing and roads, and they had maybe 10 children in one house, and they had very bad, a lot of poverty, very the worst statistics in the country in terms of maternal and newborn morbidity and mortality. And Mary Breckenridge and her British trained midwives came and turned it around. They became the best. The midwives were on horseback. They would try to go through creeks and whatever to get, with their little birth bags to get to each house, but they became the best statistics in the United States from those midwives. So I was really blessed to
Yeah.
have training there. And that was life changing, just life changing, all of it. Yeah. So when I started my midwifery practice in 1997, yeah, um, we were created it out of nothing, and we were booked solid, like, after the
Wow.
first year, like, booked totally. You can't. So that's what I've been doing. I love doing shifts. I have in the local hospital near me that it's an immigrant population. It's a hospital really is for immigrants who walk over the border and they have nothing. They have no insurance, really, and mostly Spanish speaking. And I love speaking Spanish with them and getting them out of bed and let's do some salsa, because when I go in there, they're all on their backs and, just they think America is wonderful, but well, not for them because they came from many of them have told me they've come from countries where, their mother had
Uh-huh.
10 babies in their house and everybody breastfed and they come to the United States and we're putting them in, we're like destroying this lineage of
Right.
knowing how to birth, right? We're putting them in beds on monitors, IV, can't eat, and they're thinking that like we're doing all we're doing is great, but it's not. So I'm like giving them, let's get them eating up and dancing and all kinds of stuff, and I started teaching medical students because they never saw. They said we're never going to see normal birth, so we're told to
Oh,
follow the midwife.
wow.
Yeah, so the part of me, I liked doing that, and I did that until COVID, and then it
Yeah.
became insane because I had to work when I had COVID, and it's just not possible. Anyway, so now I'm strictly back to just only home birth, and because it's much more human, and I don't ever want to set foot. Right now, as a professional, I've done my share of hospital birth, and I'm very happy to help people have a home sweet home birth like experience in hospitals because some people don't have that option or want to have a home birth. But yeah, what the whole move to so my expertise is
Mhm.
in person. I'm not techie at all. I know people wouldn't think that, but I'm just not. I'm an in-person type of person. And my daughter, who knows my passion, she said, you should be on Instagram. I'm like, what's that? Because everything was becoming more technological. This might have been 8 years ago. And I literally said, what's that? And she said, Instagram is where all these like young women have mamas and they would love you. You are so, you have this passion and you have a lot of education. You have all these handouts and you love encourage, teaching. So that's just where to do it. And I had at that time before there were videos, people sending me tons of pictures of their births and loving their births. And I've been in the orgasmic birth documentary. I've been in TLC Baby Story a couple of 3 or 4 times, something like that. So people could not understand how someone could love
Mhm.
their birth, that's all I see. I see people that love their birth, and even if it's intense, they love their birth, and so then I would post, and it just grew into like it was like over. Now it's like what 106,000 followers, and I get on cool podcasts, right? But I published my
Yeah.
book and turned my
Into a
preparation of how
full
I prepare
empire.
mamas to love the birth because It became
Yeah.
like I made it into a course so it's available to the global community because no one can understand how is it that not one person in my practice, and I've had over 1,000 babies in my home birth practice, not one person needed to
Mm,
transfer for an epidural, having a normal labor.
mm,
Not one. Now, I don't force people to stay home. If someone is having an abnormal situation, that's different. If someone is like not coping, like not coping with a severely intense posterior baby and it's just not progressing. I mean,
mhm,
there's a whole, she's been doing this 5 days and she's, there comes a point where there's the compassionate use of an epidural. We just, we need to be grateful for modern medicine when needed, but people having a normal progressive labor,
none.
not one has needed an epidural. So my transfer rate is 7%, and that's predominantly first time vaginal birthers. So it could be VBAC or a first time mom who has not prepared in the way that I now require, but in the way that I encourage them to prepare. Because today, even more, we need to prepare because we're going against the culture and our subconscious beliefs and there could be a lot of fear. There's so much that's not
Yeah.
in our conscious, but that the culture makes us think or believe or act, right? That hospital is the only place I can feel safe birthing, right? Or oh, something hurts.
Right.
It means something wrong. Well, in labor, if something hurts, and actually it's supposed to feel discomfort, and I like to call it intensity. You want to call it pain. I've had a lady tell me, I'm in ecstasy with my pain. Like, you can,
Yeah.
we have to shift mindsets, but it takes time and there's practice and ways of coping. But if they haven't done that and they don't have a doula or a doula-like support person, I now require because I see that I do my stats, so I see that common denominator. So if we get that out, then my transfer rate is so
Mhm.
little. I mean, but my C-section rate is 5%. So
Cool.
yeah, we are the
Yeah.
EMTs of birth, so I do bring a birth. It's interesting on the orgasmic birth documentary that I was in. She filmed a couple of our births and my births, people that had birth in my practice, but she interviewed me on my birth bag for 2 hours. Well, I was so excited. I have a birth ball and I have a rebozo and I have a squatting rope and I have my herbs and my homeopathy. You know what she shows in the movie? She shows all my emergency equipment. She edits 2 hours down to a few minutes of my emergency equipment because she wants to show that we're not just waving sage. We do have the same equipment that an out of hospital birthing center has. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I have had to deal with emergencies and I'm very grateful that I have my nurse training or my midwife training and my license ability to be skilled and
Mhm.
trained to deal with emergencies. Thank God I have never lost so we do have, emergencies do happen and that, thankfully birth is groovy and beautiful and wonderful, but if there until it's not, and then meconium can happen, there can be emergencies, and that's why I'm very, pro having just a midwife there just in case. Like I say, the free birth community doesn't like it, but I'm all for free births. Just have the midwife there in the
Just
background,
in case.
just in case, you
Yeah.
know. Just in case, because there's been times where I've just had to jump in, and if I hadn't or an attendant hadn't been able to jump in, that mother or baby would have had a tragic outcome. So why do that? Like I all for the natural remedies. But if we need to use
Mhm.
pitocin for a hemorrhage,
And
and
an
I can just
interesting
quickly jump and
fact
start an
is in the
IV.
state of Georgia, EMTs don't carry Pitocin. But when I had my last baby, my midwife sure as heck has Pitocin. And so I'm more comfortable in
I
her
just
hands
yeah.
than calling an EMT to transfer me right without Pitocin.
Yeah. No, I rarely call an EMT. No, I can count in less than a handful of times in all these years that I've had the 29 years now. I've had to call an EMT. But I mean, that's when I have to get to the
Right.
hospital, right? So for most transfers, like I say, if it's a mom having a stuck labor and she's just not progressing and we just need to give
It's
her an
not
epidural
urgent.
and that's like not
Yeah.
an urgent, it's a mutual agreed upon and it's not an emergency,
Yeah.
we get in the car. And yeah, I don't have to call an EMT. But yeah, so that's like to me, like I love, like, I feel like I'm a CPM at heart. I love the CPM model of midwifery. It's just that sometimes in states it's not legal, and if they're not legal and they can't carry medications that like that,
Right.
that would make me uncomfortable. So I think it's important to ask, it depends on the state. Like a CPM in New York is illegal. Like they would be arrested for practicing without midwifery without a license, whereas I'm in neighboring states, because I could drive right into New Jersey or Connecticut. I have my
Mhm.
service area encompasses the 3 tri-state area. Those states, are legal. New Jersey, it's legal. They can get licensed to CPM, so they can have uh, they can carry suturing and anesthetic, and they can get IV, and pitocin, methogen, the
Mhm.
hemorrhage medications,
So
things like that.
throughout all of
So
this, throughout all of your experience, all of your training, your own personal experience, bringing it back to pregnant mama, how has your
mhm.
philosophy changed in supporting pregnant women? What are some things that you teach or educate during pregnancy that might go against the grain of what we were taught in school?
Right. And so that's why I have a book and a course, because they're both very different. But first of all, the people coming to my practice are people that are making an informed decision that they want to have a home birth. I need them to convince me, especially first timers. I need them to convince me why they want to have a home birth. If their partner wants a home birth but they're not so sure, because they need to birth
Mhm.
where they feel safe. Right. So I can give them all kinds of books, but I really want them to, they need to transform enough for me to feel that they're going to birth well at home, but that being said, that's a different population. People are already coming to me, they've made that decision. They want a home birth, but we still have the Western American culture in us. We
Mhm.
can't help it, right? It's just there. So what I a lot of times have to work with is, even though they're making that decision,
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear still, and so that could come from so many places. So how I want them to have, and that's part of my course. I do address it in my book, but it's really most of my course. But I want them to have, to learn so much about the safety of home birth and physiologic birth. I want them to really learn about it, and about the different philosophies about obstetricians and midwives, so that and I have different things that I give them including my own, talking to them, but I want them to really trust their body's ability to give birth, like, with the
Mhm.
core of their being. This is not just you push a button. You see, we live in a we live in a culture that we just swipe and we get our results, or we just push a button, we get our results. This might be something that a mama is going to work on a daily basis, of how she can, develop that trust. Can she connect with the billions of women that have given birth before her? Can she connect with the 300,000? Every time a mom is in labor, there's 300,000 women around the
Mhm.
world that are giving birth at the same time. That's like, this is how, what I look for. What is it with her? A lot of people are in my practice are, I have, a lot of religious Christians that are homeschooling. There's a religious Jewish community in my neighborhood. I do have, so if they're in that, I have to work less, but because if they tend to, I don't want to lump anybody together, but sometimes connecting to the
Uh-huh.
spiritual, um, can help them get out. Because we need
Mhm.
to get out of our heads. And Ina McGaskin, where the farm is not far from Atlanta, he was like, tap into your inner monkey, your inner primal, because, it's really so much of us are in our left brain, right? Left brains. We are thinking, we are in the computer, we're Googling everything, right? And we're just not like existing, we're not being in
Mhm.
our body. So how can we get to be in our body? We have to get out of our brain. So sometimes for a mom, that might be do more dancing. She's a dancer, um, gardening, farming, just whatever works with that woman. That's why I love yoga so much, because it gives you the tools to using breath work, using body movement, using movement with breath, using how to sort of ground yourself and center yourself and get out
Mhm.
of the busy mind. In Orgasmic Birth, that documentary was all about tapping into the sensual, because it's that same energy, but it's also out of our head. We need to get out of our head and into our body. So there's different pathways of doing it that work for different people. But the tapping into the sensual is because it's that same energy that gets the baby in is the same energy that gets the baby
Oh,
out. So, I've had people make love in labor, right? So I doesn't mean I'm in the room watching them, I'm going to go out and give them privacy. A good midwife and doula know when to leave, right? Yeah, but it's that same energy. That's why dancing. I tell them to make 3 playlists. One is sort of like a spa, like meditative music. Another is the
mhm.
sensual slow dancing, sort of that energy that gets you into that mood of wanting to make love. And then the other one is like, bring on the
Yes.
hip hop, turn on the move that bush, shake that booty, and sometimes we just got to
Yeah.
create some fun and shake, move those hips. And at 3 in the morning, I don't care, African drums, we're all dancing. And it's whatever works for that particular mom. I had a mom in my practice who was a singer. Okay, so I said, in the heat of labor, and whenever she was in tension, whenever she felt stressed, what would help
Mm,
her was singing. So we were at the heat of her labor, and I told her, sing everywhere, sing in the car, sing while you're doing the laundry, sing, and when you do it, when you're doing anything that you don't like, when you're feeling stressed, because that would bring her into a zone that where she felt good, where she felt joy, where she wasn't stressed out. And this was, a lot of this was also, before we had, horrific
yeah,
news in our
yes.
face constantly, with the cell phones. The cell phones, I have to, now that we have the cell phones, I have to work even harder with people, because they're trained to think that a birth will happen in
Right.
15 seconds of a video that you can just scroll, and so like they feel like a failure that their labor is taking 17 hours, but actually that's a short labor for a first time mom. But, so there's a lot of good things, but I'm wary of some, of the effects of social media, but it's definitely creating much more anxiety. So I have a lot more people with
Mhm.
anxiety. So anyway, this woman in the heat of her labor, she was out of sorts, and
Uh,
I said, let's sing. Let's sing. And she got into singing, and her husband was playing the piano, and she
oh,
sang her
yeah.
baby out. She literally sang her baby out. Like she got into a zone, and her body just did its thing. And so yeah, I've been brought to tears, like humbled by what, how mamas are able to tap into the energy where they can birth. It used to not be
Mhm.
so complicated. The Western world has made it so
Right.
complicated, so yeah, so education also is, because birth used to be a part of normal home life. So all the women would of the community would or of that mom's family would be helping. So it could be the younger sister, it could be the older sister, it could be the aunt, the mother-in-law, the grandmother. Everyone was sort of helping, but we were
Mhm.
around birth. Now, because we're living in the United States and this accident of history in the 1900s, that birth was moved to the hospital. So for the elite in the beginning, but the majority of people are not around birth. So they don't they what they don't know, sometimes they could fear, and they don't, so I don't want to get a panicked call from someone who had just released some bloody show. That's normal. Like, we need to embrace. So I need to them to learn what's going to happen to their body, because it's going to be
Mhm.
big changes, and embrace it. Like, wow, just, I just had
Yeah.
some blood. It's like nothing to me is, I mean, I tell them what's a normal amount, but yeah, it's normal to bleed like a light period in labor, and that great, add it to the soup. You're going to be releasing fluids, you're going to, your body's going to do this, and I like people to know about transition. And I like people to so there's one movie I like them to watch. It was filmed in Austria in a birthing center that really shows transition, that shows the
Yeah.
hardest part of labor, but shows that women are
Mhm.
doing it. And so that I like the partners to watch that so they don't get scared. Like, well, should we go to the hospital? You think I had a doula in my practice who her mantra, like I tell everyone, vocalize. It's good to move. It's good to vocalize when you're in labor. Just be free to do, whatever you need to do. And, her thing was like, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. And her son was there watching, and she's a doula. And after the sensation of the contraction, she would say, I'm not dying, honey. I'm just saying that, you know, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying.
Mine was the F word.
It was
I just repeated the F word over and over and over again.
I had a religious Christian. Her husband was a minister, literally say that and afterwards, like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. No, nothing to apologize. This is working for you. Like, this is, I don't think God's gonna be mad at you. Not that I don't know. I haven't spoken to God, but whatever. People say, it's intense. People feel that's a normal emotion to feel they can't do it. Rather than get nervous, I'm like, she's saying I can't. We're gonna have a baby soon. So it really is.
I was like, I'm done.
You
I'm
are
done.
doing
I'm done.
it.
How much longer?
Hey, you're saying you're done?
Yeah.
Okay, you're done. I had a lady saying, I'm done. She starts, this was when I was in the hospital. I'm done. Pack my suitcase. And she gets out of bed and she starts getting her things. And then she starts pushing. I knew she was going to do that. She's not leaving.
Yeah.
She's not going anywhere. But there is a real valid mental state of, I can't do this. Something is really wrong. I want a cesarean, the most natural birth person, so that's a normal, if everybody on the team knows that's normal, including the mom, even though she's saying it, it's not like a mom in between the sensation saying, listen, I can't, I've done this, I'm really done.
Yeah.
I can't do this. Like, I'm not, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about what she's saying during the contraction, or surges or waves, whatever you want to say. But, you are doing it, so there's a lot of preparation that is just what's going to happen in my body physically, mentally, emotionally during each stage of labor, right? Because in the first stages of labor, like, you're like, oh, this is, I'm so excited. I'm having them every 20
I'm just
minutes.
listening to my music. I got my lights in the background.
I can do
easy
this.
peasy, no problem. Yeah.
I can do this. I don't even need to call my doula. Well, so that's why people want, they say to me, how can you tell where people are at without doing an internal exam? I said, I just listen and watch
You hear
them.
that, buddy?
If a mom is calling me and telling me, I'm having one now, this is great, I can handle this, I'm like, this is great. You're in early labor. That's, that's great. Versus a dad calling me and I hear in the background, okay, so we're not, she can't, that's a whole different. And there's everybody in between, right? And yeah, so that's part of the education, and then also the education is if how to cope with intense sensations. So people who can relate to that maybe are athletes, marathon runners, dancers, because they've had to work through on something's hurt. There are people that have broken their bones or they're still going to play because they want their team to win, or they want to do the show, they're the star and they're working through pain, versus, a marathon runner is going to complete the 26 miles. They might get to a point where they think they can, or I'm done, but they have food stations along the way. They have drink stations along the way. And that has to be a mindset of, I'm going to do this. Like, I don't care, that is the overall mindset. That, so many people, I had a woman in labor tell me, this is like mountain climbing. In the hardest part of labor, she would say, this is like the ones that climb the mountains that are like, with the, the angle of the mountain.
With nothing but like a little rope.
Rope, right? Yeah, rope, and the height is, like taller than any building, I would imagine. But yeah, so she told me that it was like that, and I didn't engage her in conversation during labor, but after labor, I said, "That's fascinating. Tell me why." And you said that, and she said, "Well, because I've gone on. She would probably climb Mount Everest. I mean, she's of that professional skill, but she gets to a peak." And it was really hard. And then she sees that like the next peak is like double the size. And she's all right, well, I'm not going down, I'm going to go up. But then she's on that peak and she's like, this is hurting and this is hurting. And oh my God, I can't, I'm so tired. I have no energy. And then she gets to that, I can't do this. Like I can't, but she's not going down, she's going up. And so she gets to the next, like, I guess, ledge. Huh. And then there's something 4 times the size. And then she has to tap into something. There's always that point in when she challenges herself to do harder and harder mountains. She has to tap into this strength that I'm going to do this no matter what. And I can do this. Like I did it. I'm up to here and I'm not going down. I'm going up. And so when she got to the top of that mountain, she tapped into that strength and she felt very similar to when she gave birth as when she climbs really challenging mountains. Is like, wow, I did that. Like I found this strength in my body, so I always, encourage, women might come to me telling me they're wimps and they can't even take any kind of pain. They're on a Tylenol or they take, they just can't handle pain. And I'm like, I have plenty of those in my practice, and I was one of those. So I'm just going to guarantee that you'll do fine, and then when they're in it, and I'm like, you are doing it. Look at this. So it's like, this is great. This is your mountain to climb. This is your marathon to run. Whoever I'm talking to, whatever their
Now, do you
their
find
thing
that
is,
mindset is harder to maintain when women are in the hospital? Because I totally agree with you. I think that society has stripped away women's empowerment, feel like their bodies can go
right,
through naturally. And so
much
for me,
harder.
when I had my baby at home, I didn't have the option of the epidural. And part of me was
Right.
like, oh, I think
Yeah.
that's probably why I didn't, was because that it just wasn't there. So do you find that when you're in
There,
the hospital,
yeah. There's this
yeah, versus home is
comedian.
harder?
Yes, there's this comedian I posted on one of my Instagram posts. She was like, I don't want to go to an institution to have my baby where a cesarean is an option or an epidural is an option. I
Yeah.
just don't want the option. She was just being funny about it. But I think it's much harder, and that's part of the education. So when I'm dealing with the online community, I'm not just dealing with people who are planning home birth. I'm dealing with people that really want a physiologic birth. They want an undisturbed birth. They don't have the option of home birth. They don't want a free birth. They don't want to hire a traveling midwife. They can only go to the hospital. So yeah, that's where a lot of my education comes in. Is you are going to be bombarded with this intervention, this intervention, this intervention to make a decision about all these different tests and procedures, and you need to know beforehand how you feel about them. Some are not worth fighting about, but some of them, if cord clamping, don't let them clamp your baby's cord. The baby needs a third of the
Yes.
blood supply back. It's the baby's blood. It's like a hemorrhage no one sees, right? Let the
Can we
baby
pause
get its
right there
cord
for a
blood.
second?
That
Because I don't think enough
yeah,
women realize when you're in the hospital, it's phrased as cord blood. It's not phrased as your baby's blood. And I
baby's
don't
blood.
think enough women
It's baby's
realize
blood.
that a
That's a
third
good
of
point.
the baby's blood is in that cord. So by letting that
Or backs up
right.
into the placenta during pushing. Yeah, that is a hemorrhage, and that's equivalent to a hemorrhage no one
Yes.
sees. 1/3 of a blood supply lost in an adult is
Yes. So
considered
allow
hemorrhage.
that blood to flow
Yeah,
back into your baby versus
back
yeah.
blood volume, oxygen, all the nutrients that would that help the baby transition from womb to fetal circulation to independent circulation, and long-term effects like we're getting stem cells, we're getting immune, stuff, all iron. There's so many
Let that
benefits. So
cord
no
go white.
clamping. Yeah, is my let the cord go white. So they want to do that. People ask me, they want to donate their cord blood. I said, the best recipient to your cord blood is the baby, your baby, right? I can, if you want me to harvest, I can, if the baby's totally fine and we've had 20 minutes of going and it's starting to go down if they really want. But most people in my practice, I mean, don't donate their cord blood,
Yeah,
but
that would be
they can.
Yeah.
It's
for baby to
possible.
get all the blood. I think that would be top
What?
pick for my baby to get my blood.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Well, the baby needs the baby.
Yeah.
Your own baby
Yeah, that's
needs
what I'm
your
saying,
baby's
is that
blood.
would be
Right.
my
Yeah.
first.
Right.
I think that would be my first pick.
Yeah. So what are some other
Yeah, but like I have a list of 50 interventions, literally, or procedures or decisions and tests that so it's interesting. I have a beautiful story to share about that because So I had a mom that contacted me, and they live in a very rural area where the only obstetrician that practiced was very high. I think she took my course, my guide to pregnancy, birth, postpartum. But their only option, they had no home birth. It was just this hospital doctor. The C-section rate was, let's say, very high, maybe 70%, or in the 70s. Everybody's induced. Everybody has an epidural. Not everybody's induced. Well, very high uh, uh, percentage of inductions. Nobody goes past 40 and 5, I think 40 weeks and 5 days. This was what she told me at the time. And she went to her doctor very nicely. She took my course. She was all empowered. And I would like a natural birth. I would like an undisturbed physiologic birth. And he said to her, honey, I don't know what that is. I I don't do that here. I'm not trained. I'm a doctor. He said, he was very nice. He says, I'm a doctor. She was in touch with me about this. I'm a doctor.
You
I
intervene.
am trained
Yeah.
in interventions and to intervene, and everything goes according to my, what I do, to the protocols that I practice, and that's what I do. So she says, yes, but you know very respectfully, I disagree with all that, and I have prepared myself. I've done my research. This was in, so I'm just saying it's possible. It's just harder. I have with me a doula who's going to advocate for me and knows what I want, and we've discussed all this. And I just want you to be a fly on the wall. I just want you to sit there and not be in the room at all, and just come in and catch, or my husband will catch, or however. But I really don't want you to do any intervention unless necessary. And he's was, continuing to decline that. And he's like, I've never seen
Wow.
that. I don't know what you're talking about. But eventually she got him to just do that. She had the most beautiful, undisturbed physiologic birth in the hospital. And who was crying the
The
most at that
doctor.
birth? Brought to
Oh,
tears. Never saw that. So that's how we make change. If we're going into hospital settings, we have to
mhm.
really prepare, and you have to really you have to feel that you could fight the system, because he could have easily, he did throw in the dead baby thing. You could easily, he was nice about it, but we want everything to be safe now, right? We want everything, we don't want anything to happen to your baby, so he meant well. But respectfully, we could stand up. Now, some people really don't feel they can stand up. So that's why, you bring an advocate to stand up
Right.
for you, right? It can be done, and it was done. And I have her video on one of on my website, just because it
Mm.
was just amazing, that
So
can
you
happen,
mentioned another
you
good point
know.
is you mentioned that that doctor didn't want her going past 40 weeks and 5 days. Can you
Well, now it's 39. Probably. That was, even in just a few
Oh,
years,
yeah.
it's become
Like,
39.
can we
Yeah.
debunk that myth, please? Are you do you Yes, please, go
Well,
ahead.
that study is so flawed that I actually have a blog on my website just that on the flaws of that study alone. Um, the I it's based on
Hmm.
one flawed study that so there's I don't buy into one study ever. I even have trouble buying into studies, because studies are biased, and especially if they're done or heavily funded by
Right.
pharmaceutical companies, like
Mhm.
that make Pitocin and Cytotec or Cervidil or whatever. So um yeah, there are a lot of so I have a blog article on all the research about that study and all the flaws about it, and so does Hensi Goer and evidence-based birth, and I think you can Lamaze.org has. There are definitely enough there's enough research now debunking that myth. There is absolutely, according to the evidence, there is no evidence-based reason to induce labor unless there's preeclampsia that's worsening preeclampsia, or I would say any like severe situation where the mother's health is at severe risk. Right. But certainly not like for suspected macrosomia, suspected big
That one drives me
baby,
crazy
suspected
because
small
they
baby, all this.
guess that baby's gonna be
Yeah.
12 pounds, baby comes out at 6 pounds, 8 ounces.
Yeah. And I have a personal, a really bad story about that. But yeah, meaning that I know someone who did not, who bled out through the surgery, and the baby was induced because they didn't even let her have, this was at an Ivy League institution. And she said that they told her baby was over 9 pounds. She was too small to push that baby out. They didn't even schedule have her go into labor. They just did a scheduled section. And yeah, the baby was 7 pounds. So this is not just a one thing. This is like research. According to the research, the sonograms and hand assessments are just
Mhm.
not accurate to estimate fetal weight in enough to make a medical decision based on that. And also in labor, baby's head molds because the skull bones aren't fused, and the pelvic bones are three bones connected by ligaments that can, expand, and, they're
Mhm.
smaller on your back, but if you're up with your leg up, so if you're standing with your leg on a chair, so we have to let that baby in that position and that weight try to navigate its way through the pelvis. And my big babies, I've seen plenty of big babies come out. Biggest baby in my practice was 11,
Oof.
15, but without a tear. Yeah, without a tear. She just hypnobirthed that
It's
baby
so
out. It
possible.
was her
My
fourth.
Jada was 10 pounds. I had a 10-pound
Yeah.
baby at home. And so, when they say women can't birth big babies, it's a bunch of hoopla.
Wait, but women have been birthing babies for
It's
thousands
right.
of years.
Yeah, and shoulder
Yeah.
Said
dystocia.
women have been
What'd you say?
birthing babies for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden, the last 200 years, we're gonna do it
Right.
different. Do it.
Well, they're getting bigger because obesity is rising, and so babies are getting bigger. And where the portions in the United States are keep going up, and the junk food, but diabetes is up, and a lot of the lifestyle related illnesses are up that could impact that. But like I said, I don't want to discount shoulder dystocia because I've had to deal with plenty of that, and that's really not an emergency I like to deal with. But it's not
Right.
just big babies. It's not the size of the baby that dictates whether, we don't always know what causes the shoulder dystocia to be related, but which means to the audience when the head comes out, but the shoulders get stuck behind the pubic bone. So we really have
Mhm.
minutes to get the baby out. The baby can't stay there for very long. But so the whole, they scare everybody into thinking about the shoulder dystocia. You don't want that. Well, no mother wants that. No, no, don't want that. So of
Right.
course do a C-section, so but more and more women are, hopefully I'd like to think, I mean, the ones on my page, are questioning this
Yeah,
this
it's
narrative. But there really is not an evidence-based support of much of advanced maternal age. So we have to induce them at
yeah.
39 weeks. This is just
And what about there's a
propaganda.
couple other ones I wanna touch on in pregnancy. How do you feel about cervical checks and membrane sweeps?
Okay. Cervical checks. If you're not in labor, I don't see the point of having cervical checks unless somebody wants one, but I'll talk them out of it because it's a
Yes.
brain F. It's a brain, what do you say? It screws up the
Mhm.
way you think. Because I've had moms long, closed, and thick. Their cervix is long. That's meaning the end of like the opening of the womb is long, a few inches long. It's thick around like a donut, and it's
Mhm.
tightly closed, right? And it's all the way in the back, so you barely can reach it. And they'll go into labor that night. I have been so like I love that. And if you tell someone when they're 41 weeks, your cervix is long, close, and thick, like they're not in labor yet. So why like that makes them think, oh no, so my body's
Mhm.
not doing it right. I should be more thinned. I should be more forward. I should be something. My cervix should be start to be doing something. So it messes with your head. And I've also had people walk around for 6 centimeters for weeks. They're just not in labor. I wouldn't like suggest them going far from their place that they're planning on birthing, because probably when they go into labor, things will go pretty quickly. But yeah, so I don't want them to think, to be scared though, that they could just be in a store and drop their baby. So they're not in labor. When someone's in labor, I also don't like to do cervical checks because if there's a problem, that's a different story. But in normal labor, I can kind of tell what's going on. I mean, I do this long enough that if you hire a really seasoned midwife or family doctor. I love family doctors because they practice, a lot of them practice like midwives. But the, you they can tell what's going on without having to. They can use their hands on your belly. They to check position and where they're getting the loudest heartbeat and listening to where you're getting kicked, and watching you. They can kind of see what's happening without internal exams. Now, if I have a question, if something seems to be taking long, if mom wants to know where she's at, I will do an internal exam in labor if she wants me to, if I think it would solve a problem that we're, because she's been pushing 3 hours and it still doesn't, what's going on, right? We have to, that's different than a routine cervical check every hour. So in labor, it can, like I said, I can really often tell what's going on without having to do the internal exam. So I love when I can do a birth without an internal exam. But it's violating. It's an intimate area of the mother, of the body, and it's different if the mom is asking me. She wants to know where she's at.
I know for me, I was like, get
different.
your hands off me. Like, I don't.
Yeah, most people don't.
Yeah.
If I right,
Yeah.
especially in labor,
out, not going in.
Yeah, I don't want your hands anywhere near. No, get out.
Yeah, no, but that's different than, like, let's say I'm attending a mom in labor. She's having very intense contractions, and I'm just not seeing the progress that you would. I'm not like, she's not on the clock. It's looking like she's getting exhausted, and and she's starting to like grunt, push a little bit. It's not like but there's, and I'm sort of suspecting based on how I'm feeling that the baby's posterior. I might do it. I might suggest, let's see what's going on. Or I had a woman here. This is interesting. Because I'm so against breaking the water. It's just that bag of water, double membranous bag of water, is there for a reason. Let's not mess with Mother Nature. It knows what it's doing more than we do. But I had a mom who was at 8 centimeters. She wanted me to check because she was in transition for a very long time, and she was done with transition. She's done. I want you to check me. And I checked her. I said, "Oh, it's very interesting." I said, "You're 8 centimeters dilated. You're fully effaced, but the big bag of water is like a balloon on your cervix. So when you're getting these strong contractions, the baby's head can't press on your cervix to open." I said, "I have a feeling that if I break your bag of water, that you're going to give birth in 10 minutes. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that." "Okay, we don't have to do that. I'm just saying, So 2 hours later, she asked me to check her again, and she was having the same transition-like contractions, doing all kinds of natural remedies, and same exam. She's like, "Break my effing water!" And okay, she had the baby in 10 minutes. So now, then she had 5 babies since with me. She says, "If I ever get to that point, I want you to, don't even ask me.
Yeah.
I want you to right." So everybody's an individual and has an individual situations. If someone tells me when they're not in labor to break their water, I might say, "No, not going to put you on the clock and risk your infection. And that bag of water is there for a reason, But so that's a whole different thing. But yeah, so I'm not real big supporter of internal exams
unless
there's a problem
or
needed. Yeah. And then you asked me
I
about,
feel like membrane sweep is probably on the same. Well, no, that's a little bit.
Well, okay. So I get this. So in New Jersey, there are states that actually, would you believe that New Jersey state, the law is that a licensed midwife can't attend a birth past 42 weeks. So I'm very liberal with how I give a due date. Like, I'm not just gonna say, oh, when's the first day of your last period? I do like detective work. Do you know
Mhm.
when you conceive? Maybe they don't. Okay, no, they don't. Are you tracking your cycles? Like how long are your cycles? Are they, if they're 35 days, I'm gonna
Mhm.
add 7 days to your due date because you didn't ovulate at day 14. You ovulated on day 21. Right? So that, but or I have a lady that's had 8 babies. They're all born at 44 weeks, but they gestational age
Mhm.
assessment is 39 weeks. They full of vernix. They're like, we assess the baby's gestational age. Is a certain way to do it when they're born, and they're all born like 39 weeks, but she's 44 weeks past her
Right.
first period date. Well, the baby, so people are individuals, and she gestates longer, she ovulates later, whatever it is. But I'm not gonna, what's the word we were talking about? I don't like this. You have to give birth by 42 weeks. I don't like that law. So if people are in New Jersey, we have to, I'm especially careful about how I give them a due date. And then, they naturally can try things to get them into labor. People ask me around the world, their doctor doesn't let them go past 40 weeks and 3 days or whatever, which is, I don't want the word let me, because it's your body, your birth, your baby. So just like how I think people in my practice, it's I don't want to get legally in trouble in New Jersey, but I'm saying is, I've had people like birth at my house. If we're going past 42 weeks, I'm
Right.
not going to abandon them, if they still want to have a home birth, but we can't give birth in New Jersey because I don't want to lose my license
Fair trade-off.
to all the other people I take care. Well, yeah, but I'm saying not
Yeah.
everybody has this option, right? But in so I don't like people feeling this pressure. That being said, there people do need to know that 42 weeks, that there is a slight increased risk of stillbirth and let's say complications related to the placenta, circulation to the baby. And so it is recommended to monitor the baby's health after when we
Mm.
go past that point. And expectant management, I've had people absolutely decline induction. But if somebody wants induction, they've had it. I'm done. I can't take this pressure. I'm afraid of a stillbirth. I don't even want to take any chance, whatever. I have a whole chapter in my Natural Birth Secrets book, second edition, on all the
Mhm.
natural remedies you could try, that help bring on labor. And just so you know, many of them are quite effective, and some of them don't work because your
Yeah.
baby comes when your baby comes. We can mess with Mother Nature, but the Mother Nature or God has other plans. Even the big medications, and if you talk to people who've had inductions, you'll hear a lot of times, I was in the hospital with the induction for 3 days because the
Uh-huh.
first 2 days didn't work. Or, similar story like that, or they sent me home and to come back another day. So sometimes, but I've had a lot of success with these remedies, and they are, some of them have been researched, and membrane sweep is something I would use as a last resort. Only, it is invasive, and not invasive, but it's relatively more invasive than
Right.
nipple stimulation or taking certain herbs. But I it is a way that can bring, sometimes moms will come into me and they say, "Will you strip my membranes?" This is an informed mom who's had babies before or even not, and she's read enough about it, and she
Mhm.
wants to try that, and so her cervix has to be a certain ripeness enough. I have to be able to put, a finger or two in her cervix, and what that does is when you separate the membranes from the lower uterine wall, you can release prostaglandins that can bring on labor. And I've had, sometimes you have to repeat it once or twice, sometimes not. I mean, I've had people go into labor like within that, you know, within the hour, a few hours, or within the next
Mhm.
day. So yeah, it can work. There's really, I don't really feel, if the bag of water is intact, I don't really feel that using gloves. I don't really I've not seen an infection risk. It's not really in the literature that there's a significant increase in infection from that if the bag of water, if the amniotic sac is intact. It's uncomfortable. So I like to call it the cervical massage. And but I tell moms, it's not comfortable. We use breath work and I'm gentle, but I've had people call me and just say, their doctor just went in and did it. Like they went to have their root. Some people, the practice is the doctor examines them 36 weeks weekly until they give birth. And they just did they saw blood on they felt something different and it took longer. And then they saw blood and then they had contractions and they want to know, they're calling me to ask what happened. I think a lot of them are stripping membranes without consent. And I've had people tell me that. So, and my own sister, her doctor didn't
or what fits in their schedule. You know how many times I've heard from patients where they'd be like, oh, my doctor called me in to be induced. And I say, oh, okay, why? What was going on that you needed to be induced at 38 weeks? Oh, I have no idea. They just did.
They're going to play golf next week.
They're going out.
Yeah, like where are our power going?
They're going out of town. Oh, it's the week of Thanksgiving. They're going out of town. So I think he just wanted to get it done. And I'm like, and you agreed?
That's not how this works.
That's the most common reason for induction is Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving, like the holidays. And that's not a medical reason for induction at all. So yeah, they want to make sure, and C-sections are scheduled, even inductions are scheduled so that the discharge is before the holiday. So yeah, I mean, look, if you go into this field, I knew already I was gonna be working on Christmas and I mean, it's just, if I have when you have a partner, you could say, okay, I'll do Christmas this year, you do Easter, or I'll do New Year's, you do Thanksgiving or whatever, you work it out. But yeah, we do have to work on holidays. That's just part of the nature of the work. If you don't want to be working on holidays or nights, you should be a wife or a doctor, or doula. It's not good because that's when a lot of births happen.
There's so much more that we can talk about with pregnancy, and we do have a whole other topic that we want to talk about in our next episode. But how can moms to be, families, parents, all the things, how can people follow you on social and get your book? And how can people connect with you as we wrap up this first part of pregnancy before we get it?
So my website is homesweethomebirth.com. It has everything that I offer there. It has my Natural Birth Secrets book, second edition. That's on Amazon. It's available other places, ebook, and there's Kindle, and there's other places where that's available. But that book, that's a whole long story how that book became a book. But it's a 580-page book about all the holistic modalities for all the common discomforts that people experience from preconception through to postpartum. And it's discussion of all the research around the hot topics. Should I get the RhoGAM shot? Should I not? What about group B strep? What is it? Do I test for it? Do I take antibiotics for it? Do I do genetic testing? So how do I screen for, do I need to screen for diabetes in pregnancy? So it's a lot of the, it's very different than the actual guide to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, which is a real preparation. Shift in mindset. It involves the partner. It includes things that moms can do regularly to prepare for birth and postpartum and even pregnancy, like especially if you're in a hospital practice, prepare for the best, most holistically healthy. What is holistic? Mind, body, heart, and spirit. You are not just a uterus. Okay. So how can you really have the best, most experience that you love and will treasure forever from planning a pregnancy through to birth and postpartum. Yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Home Sweet Home Birth. That's the at Home Sweet Home Birth. But the website has homesweethomebirth.com has all the resources. Yeah. And then you can also have a coaching call with me. Like I've had people call me from Australia, like New Zealand, the Philippines, all over the United States, Canada, England, Germany, Dubai, related to this issue of birth. And we're all women having the same experience around the world and now connected. And so I wanted to offer that to the global community. And that's how you can access me personally.
Well, stay tuned, y'all. We have part 2 with Miss Ann coming up. We're so excited to keep diving deeper into some of these topics. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to continue this conversation.
It's a pleasure.
And until next time,
let's discover together. We hope you've enjoyed this journey of exploration and learning as much as we have. Before you go, we have a special request for you, our beloved discoverers. We'd be thrilled if you could show your support in a few easy steps. Step 1, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a moment of discovery. Step 2, if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate and review our show. Your feedback means the world to us and helps others discover our podcast too. Step 3, whether you're on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, please share the Discovery Doc podcast with your friends, family, and social networks. It's the best way to spread the joy of discovery. And finally, don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Discovery Doc. Stay connected with us for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Plus, for exclusive content and additional resources, be sure to check out our website at www.thediscoverydoc.com. And while you're there, if you have a burning question or a topic you'd like us to discuss on the show, simply let us know. Thank you, discoverers, for being part of our incredible journey. Until next time, let's discover together. The content provided in this podcast provides general information and discussions on various topics related to health, wellness, and medical advancements. However, it is essential to understand that the content provided in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The hosts, guests, and contributors are individuals sharing their personal experiences, opinions, and knowledge in their respective fields. While they strive to provide accurate, up-to-date information, medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and the information presented in this podcast may not always reflect the most current research and medical guidelines. It is crucial to consult with a qualified healthcare professional or medical expert for specific medical concerns. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking medical treatment based on the information presented in this podcast. The Discovery Doc podcast encourages listeners to use their own judgment and discretion while implementing any suggestions, recommendations, or lifestyle changes discussed in this episode. Each individual's medical situation is unique and may work for one, may not be suitable or safe for another. The podcast hosts, guests, and contributors are not liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damages or harm that may arise from listening or acting upon the information provided in this podcast. Listeners are responsible for their own health decisions and should exercise caution and seek professional guidance when necessary. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you have read, understood, and agreed to this medical disclaimer. If you have any questions or concerns about this medical disclaimer, please consult a qualified healthcare professional.